Hi everyone, welcome back to Storytime with Alex. We are reading, just in case you've forgotten, Supernatural Night Terror by John Passarella. About to hit chapter 20. In the last chapter, Dean sleaze all over the woman at the Restful Sleep Centre, which surely there's got to be something dodgy happening there, really? Got to be. And then they got a call from the sheriff. He's gone off to see the sheriff, and Sam has gone off to see Olga Kucharski. I think was he Ted's mum? She Ted's mum? We'll find out. Anyway, it's another quite long chapter, so get comfy, people. And apologies when I stumble over all of my words and drink lots of tea. Chapter 20. Dean dropped Sam off at Olga Kucharski's house in the less affluent south end of Clayton Falls, where the homes were closer together on smaller lots. According to Lucy Quinn, the woman rarely left her house. Dean waited at the curb in the Impala while Sam rang the doorbell. Less than a minute later, a weary, grey-haired woman in a rumpled, shapeless house dress opened the door and squinted up at Sam, who showed her his FBI laminate. She frowned, nodded, and waved him inside. Satisfied Sam wouldn't be standing around for the next hour or so waiting for the woman to return from grocery shopping, Dean drove north to Welker Street, turned left and then right into Main. He parked in the municipal lot behind the Clayton Falls Apparel Company Memorial. Cars occupied about a quarter of the lot. Considering it was a Saturday, Dean imagined many township employees were off for the weekend. Dean walked past the curved memorial, right over the spot where he'd shot the man stricken with nightmare Ebola. Glancing down at the sidewalk, he marvelled at the complete absence of blood, vanished without a trace, same as the Nazi zombies. In the harsh light of day, he could almost believe everything had been a regular nightmare. But then he remembered the dissolved flesh and bones of Harvey Dufford, and wondered if the paramedics had found a way to extricate his embedded remains from the asphalt. Not without a jackhammer and backhoe, he thought. What's a backhoe? In the police department lobby, he told Millie, the dispatcher, that Chief Quinn was expecting him. She nodded and buzzed him through. This time the inner sanctum was buzzing with uniforms. Dean spotted at least 2 shift sergeants and a dozen patrol officers, conferring with each other, hacking away at computer keyboards, printing and collecting forms and photos for report binders. Wild and Carassi spoke together in low tones, the former sparing a brief nod to Dean before returning to her conversation. Sitting at his desk over a flurry of paperwork, Officer Jeffries belatedly covered a yawn when he saw Dean approaching. "Crazy night, huh?" he said. "You're like hell, Jeffries." "Pulled a double shift yesterday," he said. "Off duty now, but something tells me I'm not going to get out of here any time soon. What about you? Sleep in that suit?" "Sleeps for wimps," Dean said. "Chief Quinn?" "In his office." Dean knocked on the closed door and waited for the old man to invite him inside. The Spartan office seemed more severe than it had the first time Dean saw it, although the grim expression on the police chief's face, along with the sight of his clenched fists resting on a mound of police report folders stacked in the middle of his desk, might have contributed to the chill in the room. "Close the door," Quinn said. "Take a seat." Dean complied. "How's your daughter?" Quinn's eyes flickered to Lucy's graduation photo on the corner of his desk, and he frowned. Upset, naturally. She lost a good friend, 2 now, and she's sticking with her ridiculous story. I'm not sure I can help her unless I get some reliable information. "No luck finding the car?" Dean asked, even though he knew the car wouldn't exist until the next time it manifested. Humour the man, he reminded himself. "None," Quinn said. "Probably under a tarp in a garage somewhere. But I've got nothing to go on." "You wanted to see me?" Dean prompted. "You and your partner," Quinn said. "Where is he?" "Following a lead," Dean said, reluctant to go into details. Technically, Olga Kucharski was a grieving grandmother, not a witness to any of the living nightmares. The chief might not approve of them troubling an old woman with no apparent connection to the town's troubles. "How can I help?" "You can start by telling me what the hell is happening to my town," Quinn said. "Half my office out there are convinced they've seen zombies or that giant monsters are attacking residents." "We warned you about the hallucinogen," Dean said, "and I was disinclined to believe you at the time. But now?" "Now I'm willing to concede that something is causing people to hallucinate, but something else is going on." He slapped a hand down on the top folder on his desk. "Do you know what's in here?" "I can imagine." "There are photos of a human being who looks like a half-melted popsicle. I saw that person. Nasty." Jeffries told me, Quinn said. He also told me that 2 witnesses blame a giant spider for the attack. Yes, sir, a tarantula. It was not a tarantula. It wasn't. Of course it wasn't a giant spider. That's just what they saw. Dean said, nodding. That part is the hallucinogen. I get it. What I don't get is what's really going on here. Samples were taken to the lab. I won't have the report any time soon, but I'll go out on a limb to say it was some sort of acid. Some sort of bioterror agent, Dean said, trying to couch the seriousness of the situation in a manner the pragmatic lawman could accept. Quinn snapped his fingers. Exactly. A psychotropic drug to create false impressions of what's happening. Unreliable witnesses. Damn sneaky if you ask me. That's one possibility. What I'm grappling with here is the scope of this attack, Chief Quinn said, nodding thoughtfully. I know you saved a child at the Quick-Mart sinkhole. Good work. Thank you. And some jackass was crushed by his own car. Tried to warn him. Some people never listen. Dean frowned briefly, wondering if the police chief was inadvertently or subconsciously referring to himself. No matter what his officers told him, he was determined to find his own explanations. We've had a nasty storm. Lost some power lines, car accident, and that awful tree accident that killed Mac Barnes, none of which I can blame on terrorist activity. Well, there is the matter of the tree being relocated to the middle of the street, which makes no sense. Damn prank if you ask me. Why would a terrorist move a tree? The sinkhole? They occur naturally, and some are frighteningly large, unless you expect me to believe in some kind of subterranean sabotage, right? A terrorist cell embedded for years, having some hand in local construction? It's possible. Chief Quinn drummed his fingers on the mound of police reports. Something in your mind, Chief? I told you this was a quiet town, he said, and it has been. But this isn't over yet, is it? Dean shook his head. Not until we find whoever is responsible, no. Quinn tugged on his earlobe, a deep frown on his face. I have a captain, 4 shift sergeants, 30 patrol officers, a couple of detectives, and administrative staff at my disposal. More than enough to handle the usual level of madness. But I find my officers compromised by these hallucinations. I've asked all of them to work double shifts until we put an end to this. Oh, tea. Tea break. Sounds good, Dean said. Unless Sam and he stopped whatever supernatural agent was bringing nightmares to life, the level of violence in Clayton Falls would only get worse. Until then, an all-hands-on-deck mentality would, he hoped, save some lives. Good, the chief echoed, but not good enough. Have you considered enforcing a town-wide curfew? Dean suggested, but the more he thought about it, the more impractical it seemed. It might stop the public violence, but it wouldn't stop people from sleeping and having nightmares. Terror would migrate to more homes like the Barnes house. Not enough evidence, Quinn said. I can't issue a curfew because of some phantom menace. Storms and sinkholes? No. We'll handle this proactively, with manpower. Manpower? One of the reasons I asked you to check in was to let you know I've called in to the Colorado State Patrol. You do? Yes, Quinn said, for backup and support. 6 extra bodies arriving here tonight, possibly more. They'll report to me naturally, just thought you should know. I appreciate that, Chief, Dean said. Can I make a suggestion? Let's hear it. Have them patrol in pairs. Why is that? Because if they're alone, they might not believe what they see, Dean said. Hesitation could be fatal. A second set of eyes could make all the difference. Quinn nodded. Good point, since I don't even believe what they saw. Suppose the hallucinogenic effect might vary between them. That too, Dean said reluctantly. Whatever gets the job done, he reasoned. Anything else? That's all for now, Quinn said. We'll talk soon. Okay, Dean said, rising to leave. He pushed at the door. About Lucy. What about her? She being careful? She has a shift at CJ's, Quinn said. I told her to go straight home after and stay there. Good, Dean said. He paused again halfway through the doorway. Will she listen? Truthfully, I don't know. Maybe. I hope so. Me too, Dean said. If the charger returned for a 3rd night, he had no doubt she would be its target. Dean closed Quinn's door on the way out and was about to navigate a path through the gathered police officers when Jeffries called him over. A young policewoman had turned a chair around to face Jeffries' desk and had 2 folders open side by side. A quick glance revealed that they were the case files for the Gila monster and tarantula attacks. Jeffries, Dean said. Do you tell you he's calling in the state patrol? No offence, Dean said, but you need all the help you can get. None taken. The policewoman stood and faced Dean. Jeffries made introductions. Agent DeYoung, Senior Patrol Officer Carleen Phillips. Dean shook her offered hand. You're looking at terrorists for this, she said with a nod towards the file folder on the desk. That's our working theory. She picked up the 2 monster attack folders, stared at them, and shook her head in disbelief. Weird, you know, like something out of Nightmare Theatre. For a moment Dean wondered if she had somehow stumbled into the Winchesters' actual theory and not their cover story. Not possible, he thought. Even the people they told outright couldn't accept it. But by people he was thinking about Sophie Pizzette. A few moments passed before he realised his mind had wandered, and both Jeffries and Phillips were looking at him as if they expected some kind of coherent response. A bioterrorism agent affecting the subconscious might be involved, Dean said, hoping it sounded plausible, even though it was a bunch of bull. Sam would have had a better luck selling that line. Dean cleared his throat. How's the coffee here? Phillips grinned. An acquired taste. 3 parts battery acid, 1 part roofing tar, Jeffrey said. Beggars can't be choosers, Dean said. Lead the way. Entering Olga Kucharski's house. Oh, wait. Kucharski? Sam's first impression was of musty gloom. Dark curtains and blinds obstructed most of the light that attempted to enter through the windows. Dark panelling encased the bottom half of the walls, dingy wallpaper, with designs too faded to distinguish, covered the top. Most of the walls were fronted with dark wooden bookshelves packed with old hard-bound books steeped in dust and mildew, and bulky hutches filled with worthless bric-a-brac, collections of snow globes, ceramic fish and frogs and turtles, tiny bottles filled with multicoloured sand, oriental fans. The glass doors on the hutches kept the dust away from the interior shelves, but every other surface looked as if it hadn't been cleaned in a long time. Sam wasn't surprised by the old woman's inattention to house cleaning. She walked with difficulty, hunched over with laboured breathing, her arms trembling. As she led him down a cramped hallway to the kitchen, Sam's gaze wandered to a framed portrait of Lech Walesa. A small bronze plate bolted to the bottom of the frame listed the dates Walesa served as Poland's president. Paired with the portrait in a matching frame was a map of Poland. A freestanding bookshelf on the opposite wall displayed books that, unlike those in the towering monuments of mildew he passed earlier, looked as if they'd actually been read or perused in the last decade. These books covered a wide variety of topics, all dealing with Poland. Multiple volumes on the history of the country, volumes on life during wartime, the changing face of politics, the legends and folklore, famous people, tourism, music, literature, sports, geography and demographics, even several cookbooks. The woman had access to anything she'd ever want to know about her country of origin. In the small kitchen, which had enough floor space for a table and 4 chairs but not much else, she opened a cabinet above her head and reached for 2 glasses. When Sam saw her hands trembling, he stepped forward and said, "Allow me." "I'm not helpless, you know," she responded sharply. "I'm a guest in your house," Sam said. "I want to help." "Don't have any fancy bottled water?" "Tap's fine," Sam said. He filled 2 glasses and set them on opposite sides of the table. When he reached to pull back a chair for her, she smacked his hand away. "Enough the Boy Scout crap," she said. "State your business, young man." Sam waited as she fumbled with the chair, pushing it back with the edge of a curled fist before plopping down in apparent exhaustion. When she was settled, with her ragged breathing under control, he sat down and took a sip of water, like this. The centre of the table held a framed photo and a vase of flowers a few days past fresh. "It is Kucharski. They totally misspelled it on the thing. That wasn't my fault." "I'm sorry to trouble you, Mrs. Kucharski," Sam said. "I was hoping you could answer a few questions for me about your grandson. Theodore? You're here about Theodore? You're late, aren't you?" she said bitterly. "They let him die a year ago." "Who let him die?" "Sad excuses for friends, that's who," she said. "Let him drive after he'd been drinking. And that girl, Chief's kid. Teddy was too good for her. They were all in the car with him when he crashed." "Of course they were," she sang, her voice rising. But only my boy died. Theodore was a good Polish boy. He deserved better." Her hand trembled as she raised the glass to her lips, water nearly sloshing over the rim before she took a sip. "He was the only family I had left. If they were real friends, they would have kept him out of that car. I'm sorry for your loss." She was quiet for a time, and Sam debated excusing himself. But just as he was about to stand, she began to speak again. "He loved that car," she said. "That's all his father had to leave him. When Pyotr, my son, bought that car, I thought it was a waste of money, but he rebuilt it piece by piece. It took him years, a labour of love, and Theodore took real good care of it until it was a horrible accident." "Horrible for Theodore," she said. "His so-called friends walked away from it." So I'm doing this one-handed so I can hold my tea. "I understand they were all injured." She scoffed with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Injuries. More like inconveniences. And they got off with a slap on the wrist. That girl, she has connections. Father's the police chief. Special treatment for her and for those boys." "You are aware that Steve Bullinger and Tony LaCosta are both dead." "What? Dead?" She frowned at him. "How should I know? I don't read the papers, and the TV news is too depressing. Why should I watch?" "They were both killed by a hit-and-run driver." "Ha! Imagine that," she said, shaking her head. "Like that old movie, The Postman Always Rings Twice. Maybe they should have died in the accident that killed my Theodore. What's that they say? Living on borrowed time?" "The same car hit both of them. Tony last night, Steve the night before." "What, you think I did it?" "I don't drive no more. Take the bus or bum a ride." Sam leaned forward. "The odd thing is," he said, and watched her reaction, "the car that hit them was a '68 Charger, red with a white stripe down the hood." She looked puzzled, frowning again. "Theodore's car?" "Identical." "Impossible," she said. "The car was wrecked, dumped in a junkyard. Saw it with my own 2 eyes. I went down there to claim it, but it was a mess. There was no one to rebuild it anymore." "Can you think of anyone who would want revenge?" "I was his only family," she said, "and I'm in no condition to run down a bunch of teenage hooligans." "Other friends?" "He had a blind spot for those 3. Wasn't anybody else," she said. "I'm the only one who cares that Theodore's gone. Lucy Quinn cared for him a great deal." "I'm sure that's what she tells everyone," the old woman said dismissively. "It's all about sympathy for her." A coughing fit seized her, turning her pale, lined face beet red. As Sam started to rise, she waved him off and drank some water. Sam lowered himself in the chair. He reached for the framed photo on the table, turned it towards him, and looked closer. A smiling woman with greying hair stood next to a teenage boy in a shirt and tie in front of a church. "Is this you with Theodore?" Sam asked, startled. "Of course it is." "When was this picture taken?" "About 18 months ago," she said. "That girl took it after she came to church with us. Kissing up was all that was. But it's a good picture of Theodore." "Yes," Sam said slowly, setting it down. "Yes, it is." The woman in the photo was hardly recognisable as the person sitting across from him. Tragedy and illness and stress had a way of ageing people beyond their years, but the effect in this case was extreme. In 18 months, Olga Kucharski looked as if she'd aged 25 years. Something occurred to Sam, but he'd have to approach it delicately. "How was your relationship with Theodore?" "Fine," she said proudly. "We're family. The only family each of us had. We took care of each other. You'd make sure he went to school, did his homework, got plenty of sleep, of course. And he'd make sure you were taking care of yourself." "Naturally," she said. "I'm sometimes forgetful. He'd remind me to take my medicine." "Exactly," Sam said. "Family, taking care of family." "That's how it is," she said, nodding. "You have any brother?" "Yeah." "Then you know." Sam nodded. "So Theodore would make sure you had regular checkups?" "Of course," she said. "He would drive me wherever I needed to go." "But now you have to remember all that stuff on your own," Sam said. "For instance, when was the last time you saw your doctor?" "I stopped going to the doctor," she said with a bitter laugh. "When I lost Teddy, it didn't matter no more. Who cares what happened to a lonely old woman? You must have friends here, neighbours?" "It's not the same," she said with another flick of her hand. "Besides, the only doctor I need I see every night." "I'm sorry." "All right, come on, I'll show you." As she painfully pushed herself up out of her chair, Sam rose to help her, but again she refused any assistance. Once on her feet, she paused to catch her breath and took another quick sip of water. Breathing audibly, almost with a wheeze, she walked back down the narrow hallway. Instead of heading to the door, she turned right into a dark living room with a 27-inch television, a threadbare green-checked sofa behind a small coffee table, and a worn recliner with antimacassar draped over the headrest. Beside the recliner, which was pointed towards the television set, a small table held a lamp, a remote control, and a folded newspaper TV schedule. "I don't sleep good," she said, "not since Theodore's passing. Toss and turn in my bed, so I come down and watch television until I nod off. He's on late at night, when I can't sleep." As Olga Kucharski approached the TV, Sam's gaze drifted across the wall and discovered more than 24 photos of Theodore Kucharski. From baby photos through high school, it was possible to trace the growth and development of the woman's grandson. He imagined that most of the photos had gone up on the wall after the boy's death, making the room a shrine, each age in each photo a memory trigger for her to record a different time in Theodore's life. On top of the television, a more recent photo was bracketed by 2 glass vases filled with flowers about as fresh as the bouquet in the kitchen. She probably brings home flesh flowers, gross. Fresh flowers from the supermarket each week, he thought. He was reminded of the garment factory fire memorial, a communal mourning shared by the whole town. And here, in this house, Olga Kucharski battled her grief alone. Started watching him every night, a habit. Now he's like an old friend, and he's from Clayton Falls. Met him once at a movie rental place over in the strip mall downtown. That's where I got this, she said, pointing to a spot on the wall above the television. Or, more specifically, a framed 8x10 photo, the only picture in the room not of her grandson. Sam stepped forward to examine the subject in the glossy publicity photo. A man theatrically costumed as a mad scientist. Probably in his mid-60s, though his zombie makeup made his true age hard to guess. The man had a shock of white hair and startled wide eyes. He wore a long white PVC lab coat smeared with stage blood. In one hand he held an Erlenmeyer flask filled with neon green fluid emitting tendrils of white smoke. The other hand gestured the improbable concoction as if to announce to the world that he'd finally made his deranged breakthrough, a B-movie lunatic's eureka moment. "He's Polish too," Mrs. Kucharski said, as Sam examined the photo. "I had him sign his real name. Joseph Someone's Polish pronunciation isn't good. Wieczorek. I knew it because of an article in the paper. Most people only know him by his TV name. Since Theodore died, he's the only doctor I need." Sam looked at the bottom of the photo where the guy's character name was pre-printed in dripping blood-red script letters. And that's all we know for now. Find out who this mysterious mad scientist character is in the next chapter of Supernatural Night Terror. See ya.